So, yes, we have been talking about anapanasati.
Yes. So, the last couple weeks I've been focusing on just trying to go through the steps, particularly focusing on the gladdening the mind, but
Yes, that's a good.
trying to go through the whole thing. And I just wanted to see if I'm on the right track, both in I, I have questions both about like the specifics of am I on the right track with Anapanasati, as well as the bigger picture of am I on the right track in general? Should I even be doing this? Because I realized we got very specific really fast, and I forgot to ask where I should be in general. Like, should this even be my focus right now?
um, yes, it should be your focus, but over time, we'll begin to understand more and more of what the value of this is. Because basically, the most important skill of all, though I keep harping on sati over and over again, because that's the skill that the students need to be developed. But the overall skill that's the most important is one's right noble view. And that we will come to understand more and more about what right noble view is and is not. But that's also just, it's there right in the beginning, in the sense of part of one's right view is going to be that it's better to develop these skills like the skill of sati. That's one's right view from the beginning. But ultimately, that the ultimate right view will be. Bhikkhu Buddhadasa said it like this: nothing is worth clinging to as I, me, or mine. Now, Willie and I have just finished an episode that's actually quite advanced in this regard, but we were talking about it, the example of having the dentist drill and fill and do what they're going to do without any anesthetic, because that's what's I've generally gone to Asian dentists, but I was actually surprised to go to a Thai dentist, and she asked me the question, "Do you want anesthetic?" Assuming that I said no, and maybe it's because a lot of people are so poor that they can't afford the anesthetic, and so that adds to the bill, and so people will do it for that. But she assumed by just saying, "If you need it, just raise your hand," and then she's eventually got into doing about the best job a dentist could do to let her know, to let me know that she's in that tooth. The kind of stuff that people would call intense pain. But if the attitude is the attitude that this is not my tooth, that this tooth now has been given to the dentist and it belongs to her, and she could do with it what she will because I trust her. Otherwise, I wouldn't have given her, I wouldn't be sitting in this chair. So now that I trust her, I give her the tooth, not mine. And by relinquishing that it's me, that means that now the tooth is feeling sensation and that the mind would call it pain, but it's not my pain. I'm good to go. I'm going to sit here and make sure that my hands are relaxed, and I'm going to be doing some deep breathing, and I'm going to be paying attention to what the dentist is actually doing. Though I can't see her, I know basically what she's doing when she reaches and whatnot like that. So in another case, you could say that you kind of become the dentist. You're more interested in what the dentist is doing than that she's doing it to my tooth, or more specifically, me. This is kind of advanced stuff, but you can get down to that and many other things that are really worthwhile understanding, that our suffering comes from our attachment. And so when the tooth is me, I'm really clinging to the sensation of that tooth. But if I say, oh, wait a minute, tooth is not mine, then I can raise above that tooth. And now I can observe the tooth, and I can see that the tooth is in great agony. Yeah, but that's the tooth, and that's between the tooth and the dentist. I'm just here to watch. This takes a kind of detachment, and that detachment is what we're going to be growing for. In the beginning, we begin to detach ourselves from our thoughts because that's the easiest thing that we can become detached from. How do we do that? By gladdening the mind. Recognize that the mind has wandered away, and so I'm going to detach from that thought and come in and gladden the mind and do something new. Eventually, as we get progress and start working with Vedana, with feelings, we begin to let go of the feelings that we're accustomed to having and give ourselves new ones, so that we begin to develop rapture and pity. Actually, rapture is the English language bad translation of pity, but it's very hard to describe it. And this is the day that we should be talking more about this, is to start adding Vedana, because you're already getting, you by the way that you've told me about it already, I assume that you're getting into being able to gladden the mind, which means to be able to let go of the thoughts that you were having and do something better.
Yes, a
Like
bit.
taking a deep breath. All right. So eventually we start letting go of the old samsara of feelings. And the way that we would talk about that is that you were raised in a way that you felt the kind of feelings in a child's way that the adults around you were having. So you learned to feel just like you learned language and you learned so much from them, you also learned to feel the way that they felt. Unfortunately, you were not raised by a small group of Buddhas. Ordinary people with ordinary feelings, and these ordinary feelings then we become tightly attached to. I mean, really tightly, in the sense that they become almost instinctual, because the instinct is that we can feel, but which feelings that we have are deeply buried into the programming. An example of that is when, okay, school, for instance, when children go to school, they basically have to give up their childish toys. They cannot draw whatever they want to draw or sing a song or talk to their friends. No, you've got to sit here and learn your ABCs. You've got to listen to this child read and you're reading next, or whatever the system is, so that the child learns to do what he's told to do. And that becomes the hallmark of our entire society, is people going around doing what they were told to do. And we've had a huge memory bank of rules, regulations, oughts, shoulds, ways of doing things, and ways of feeling. And so we learned all of this from everybody, and now we're operating with that map. And that it basically has the map of, in Freudian psychology, is a good way of looking at this. And that is that there is an ego, a superego, and an id. Have you heard about this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Eric Berne redefined these terms to make them simpler to understand. And that is that the superego is now called the parent ego state, and the id is now the child ego state, though that's only for understanding purposes, but is basically the reptilian mind or the instinctual way that we live. But we can call it the fundamentals, the id, the source of feelings. And so we can refer to it as a child because that's the ego state that most children are in quite often. But there's this other thing called the adult. Now, the adult ego state is, in fact, the frontal cortex. It makes us human. And that part of our job is to solve the bickering between the superego and the id, or between the parent and the child, where the parent inside of our own mind says, go on a diet, or you should do this, or go clean your room, or 10 million different things I tell you to do. And the child is inside rebelling. I don't wanna go on a diet. Or yeah, I'll go along with it, but when I get in front of the refrigerator, the diet is out. Or we feel guilty by not doing. And so we're at war with ourselves because of all of the shoulds that we have in the mind. And that when the adult ego state is not present, when we're not watching what's going on, we get into dialogues with ourselves that wind us up in bad feelings. And almost always that stuff comes out of the past. This is why the Buddha is so big on, don't go into the past. It's dangerous territory. Yeah, you can find some pleasant memory, but right after that, you're going to find something that happened that you don't like. And so we begin to monitor our thoughts and decide that we're only going to have the kind of thoughts in the mind that are wholesome, and no longer carry around unwholesome thoughts. And the unwholesome thoughts would be all of the oughts, shoulds, woulds, coulds. And so this is all at the feeling level. And that when we stop feeling the way that we have gone into the habit of feeling, now we can start to actually develop the skill of feeling the way we want to feel. Now I ask you, just in passing, which would you prefer? To go along feeling the way that you've been feeling all along, or to start feeling the way you want to feel?
To feel the way you want to feel.
All right, I see a smile. All right, when are you going to do this?
Well, so that actually is kind of one of my main questions on this, is that I feel like I do have some control over that during the meditation process, but what that made me realize was really what it means to say unconditioned happiness. Because while I feel like I have control, it feels very conditioned at that point. That it's because I'm doing something, it's fabricated. And
All
so
right.
I'm not sure if that's the right thing to be doing.
Yes, and you can see it that way with the following descriptions and discussion, and that is that we'll call this right action or right effort. That this system that we're talking about, the teachings of the Buddha, he actually put right effort on the list of skills to be developed, because we do really need to put in some effort. That is not going to be unconditioned. It's going to be conditioned, and it's going to be conditioned basically. Let us say that you're stuck in a tar pit. You're covered with tar up to your neck, but somehow or another, you recognize that you can work your way through the tar, get over to the shore, and get up out of this tar pit. That you just can't think your way out of the tar pit, and it's just going to magically transport you over to the shore. That would be the unconditioned that you're talking about. No, we've got to condition it. There's some crawling through the tar to be done.
Okay.
Another way of talking about it is that basically there are two kinds of music students. There's a third kind, the gifted. But let's talk about ordinary kids. The ordinary kids who take piano lessons, if they are taught correctly by both their mom and their teacher, then they'll be given simple music that's easy on the ear and everybody likes it. And he continues that way. But if he sees the piano as work, something that he has to do, there's a whole lot of struggle, and that he is made to practice the piano. Or in the case of my daughter, I'm teaching her to read in English. She goes to Thai school and she's doing whatever they do in Thai school. But now she's actually beginning to enjoy coming and reading. And while she's enjoying it, she does it a whole lot better because she's paying attention to it. If she doesn't enjoy doing it, then it's my job to get her interested in it rather than making her read. In fact, I made a mistake a couple of times simply because I wasn't watching closely. But now the job is to get her to really enjoy reading, and the rest will take care of itself. So this is what I'm offering you, is to put in the same amount of effort that you did, but change your attitude about the effort that you're putting in. To begin to enjoy that you're putting in the right effort.
Okay.
It becomes almost effortless once you enjoy the effort that you're putting in.
Well, and that's what I've been trying since our last discussion, is to only meditate however much while I'm able to continue allowing it to feel good rather than forcing it. And so at first, my meditation actually decreased a little bit by a couple hours a day. But then just in the last couple of days, it's actually come back by just doing it naturally, not like setting timers and stuff, that it has come back up. So I was a little concerned that it was dropping off that way, but I feel more comfortable about it now.
Well, right. This is what's happening is that you're actually seeing what's happening, and by doing so, you're gaining some confidence. And by doing that, then that gives you the right noble attitude that this is possible, that you can do this. Now, the emphasis is not on the you that can do this, but rather this can be done right here, right now, by this human body, with this human mind. This can be done. This is a doable thing, and is worthy of practice. And so by doing that now, you can see that now your right noble view is continuing to go up with confidence. Confidence is, by the way, is the word shraddha. And all of these various things that we're talking about are various skills to be developed. It's almost like you're not just practicing the violin or just practicing the piano, that you're practicing to become a one-man band. And I have the image of having the bass drum tied to the back of the shoulders with the bass drum mallet being operated by the foot as we're walking along. But I'm actually thinking more of a symphony orchestra, that we have to learn to play all of the instruments of the human psyche, which means there's a lot of different skills to be developed. And Sati's number one. Right view goes along as the base. Right effort, right attitude, and now we're getting into, and that's just the Eightfold Noble Path to get us started on the practice with the right attitude, and the right effort is to gladden the mind. But now we've just worked with the thoughts. Now it's time to let's also work on feelings. And the feelings are going to be, I'm not going to feel the way that I've always felt. I'm going to feel the best way I want to. I'm going to take a deep breath, and I'm going to sit here and enjoy the moment so that we become satisfied. And that satisfaction is actually the word sukha in Pali. And the word sukha is actually in the Pali and in the Thai language means opposite of dukkha. So when you're in a state of satisfaction, when you're in a state of pleasure or joy, that means that you are free from suffering or free from dukkha, because you're satisfied with this present moment. And when you have the right attitude of, we can do this, no matter how often or how deep a thought comes, I can throw that thought out and I can come back and feel the way I want to. Now, that last statement that I made is actually the Buddha's definition of the first noble knowledge. The first knowledge is no matter how obstructed the mind gets, I can clean it out and come back to this present moment to see the truth of things. Then he says, this is the first knowledge that is super mundane, noble, is a factor of the path, and it's not had by ordinary people. Most people, when they practice meditation, they think of it as hard. But once you begin to see that not only is it not hard, but that it's doable, not saying that it's easy yet. In fact, it may never get easy. Easy means we're getting lazy. But that we get to the point that this is doable. Yes, I can come back to this present moment right now. Take a deep breath. Here we are. All right. So this is the way that we have. That's the first noble attitude, that we can come to this state of it, of let us say temporary but useful state of satisfaction. And as we develop that skill, along with gladdening the mind and remembering and all of the other skills, we're adding now the skill of satisfaction, the skill of sukha. This is actually step 6 of anapanasati. And as we develop that state, develop that skill of sukha, and the confidence grows, now we begin to go after that feeling of success, the yippee-ki-yo-ki-yay feeling, the kind of thing that brings goosebumps or shivers. It's like, oh, I can do it. Not that this happened to me, but that this was part of the process of the skills that's being developed. And so this is what they mean by rapture or piti. Some in English refer to the word as bliss, but I don't really know what the word bliss means other than everybody who talks about it don't have it. But we can have that feeling of confidence and success and the feeling that we can do this. And we do that through the gladdening of the mind. So now what we're doing is that we're beginning to put together all of the factors of anapanasati. We're putting the body together because we're doing some deep breathing. We're getting the body oxygenated. And in fact, by oxygenating the body, we're getting the frontal cortex, which is the adult part of the ego state. We're turning that dude on. He says, okay, it's time for you to wade into that argument between the parent and the child, which basically comes down to the point of parent, shut up, sit down, and go away. And for the child, your job is yippee-ki-yo-ki-yay. And so we'll let the wisdom of the adult work with the id rather than the stored programming of the superego, which is from nurses, from doctors, from teachers, from school principals, from the bully on the school field to the professors and the preachers and everything, all of our own stored information we don't need. So we don't need the past anymore. That what we need is to develop the skills to live in this present moment wonderfully. And so that's the overall view, but there's still more to it than even that. And that is going right down to the basic instinct levels. And going down to the basic instinct level, there is a thing within each one of us that is referred to as the self-preservation instinct, and it's by far the most important one. And that all of the other instincts, including procreation, nesting, territorial, preening, that kind of stuff, all comes as a basis for that this program, this thing that's built in DNA, is there in almost all life forms. Dogs have it. Everybody's got this self-preservation instinct, and that's why wildebeest, for instance, or animals that lions like to eat, will herd together because the middle of the herd is the safest place. Being out on one's own is dangerous. So this gives rise to those kind of secondary instincts of our herding instinct. So it's our herding instinct that causes the child of age 6 to sit down and learn the ABCs rather than giving the old finger to the teacher. I'm going to do what I want to do, and the hell with you. But 6-year-olds, they don't have that. What they would be terrified to do that, or they would feel guilty. That's the success of the educational system, is children give up their freedom. And what I'm inviting you to do is to take your freedom back again. The freedom to do what you want to do, sing the songs you want to sing, feel the way you want to feel, and be completely free from all things that you would attach to. Because when we attach, that's kind of suffering, including being attached to, I am the tooth that the dentist is drilling on. Well, I'm not that tooth. That tooth is just singing his song. It's a song of agony, like O Sole Mio or whatever, but agony music is beautiful music too. Pavan, Tchaikovsky's Sixth Symphony. Agony music is, in fact, a very deep part of our nature. And so let the tooth sing its agony song, because that tooth belongs to the dentist. It doesn't belong to me. If it's my tooth, then I'll certainly suffer because I won't like it.
Yeah, that one's easier said than done. I keep trying to think of the body as being like my car, that it's something I want to take care of, but I don't have to be so concerned with whether it hurts to change tires or whatever. It kind of works, but when they hit the nerve or something, it doesn't really work so well.
Well, that's why these are skills to be developed. This takes practice, and it takes to waking up. To wake up to the fact that, oh, this is a puncture of me, not a tire. And then you say, wait a minute, I am not that tire. I'm not that truck or that car, or even that tooth that's being drilled upon. It's not me. And so this is a major quality of the teaching of the Buddha. And Bhikkhu Buddhadasa, like I said, gives the phrase that he uses often. It's in every book that he's written and been published. And that is, nothing is worth attaching to as I, me, or mine. All right. And by attaching to it's my car, the next very, very short step is that is me. It is me that's being punctured, not just my tire. But when we recognize it, it's just a tire. The reality, the physical reality, is just a tire. And all of our feelings about it are optional. And the best feeling to have is whip, yippee-ki-yo-ki-yay. I am not attached to that tire. It is not me. And so we begin to practice that with all the little things, and we become proficient at it. But the important skill that needs to be developed is that skill of sati, to remember that I am not that tired.
Yeah, I feel like that part has progressed a lot just with this slight change in how I'm practicing, and that it's there even not during practice. Like the throughout most of the day, I have that. There's still some times where it doesn't stick, but um, but throughout most of the day where I'm awake, at least it's there.
Uh-huh. Well, this is in fact a good point to introduce the concept of the three P's. Now, I learned about the three P's from the psychology, but that I have a different group of words for the three P's. In psychology, as protection, permission, and potency, when the therapist gives the client permission to do it and then protects them. Oh, if you feel bad, come and I'll take care of you. And eventually, then the potency is that no, the client can make the change. She doesn't have to come to the teacher because she's powerful on her own now. All right. But there's another way of looking at it. The three P's is practice, performance, and play. And that right now you're still in the practice phase, and that it's very good to practice formally, but you also begin to practice sort of out in the world. But that practice out in the world is very much like um, the thought comes being on your toes, or like a piano student will practice for most of the year on a particular piece of music more and more intensely till the time of the recital. And now that student is no longer practicing that piece of music. Now she's got to play it in front of mom and dad and all of these other kids and all of their parents and everything. And so there's more to be done than just playing the music. Even if you can play it right at home, now you've got to be able to play it right while you're under the imaginary pressure that people actually care. And so this is what we mean then by allowing yourself to be on your toes or under pressure, to be intently interested in being uh, awake, or to remember to be awake, to start watching, to recognize that the world out there now is a minefield that I didn't know before, and I kept getting this mental leg and that mental leg blown off. And now I'm going to start watching where I'm walking. I'm going to start watching where I'm going. I'm going to learn to play my way through, perform my way through the day. I'm going to learn to perform my way so that I can avoid suffering as best I can. That, for instance, I go out and I see the tire's flat, but it's not me that's flat, it's just the tire that's flat. And we have to keep remembering that I am not what I used to identify with as I, me, or mine. And I can see from behind you there with this camera that you've got a lot of stuff that you can cling to. Whole bunch of books going on.
Yeah, no, I've been getting rid of books, but there's still a lot of them.
And I imagine if you loan a book to someone, you'll remember and want it back.
No, I let them go. I have too
Good.
many
All
books.
right. So you're getting beyond that. That's excellent. That's really excellent.
I'm happy to get them out.
Oh, that's excellent. So now you're beginning to understand that it's our through our instincts that are wrongly trained that we identify with all kinds of things. And that identification is the problem. For instance, I am a Republican, or I am a Democrat, or I am an American citizen, or I am a Christian, or I am a good old boy. Whatever our identification with is, when that society or group or organization or nation or political party or whatever has its own ups and downs, because I'm identified with it, that means I have to go up and down too. So when the Democrats get a good thing, then I feel good about it. And when the Democrats have a bad day, then I feel bad. Which gives, if people that identify with the Democrats and watch what the Democrats are doing, they're constantly on a yo-yo because things are happening so often that are bad for the Democrats, and so many things that are happening that are so good for Democrats. We don't know which way to feel, other than whatever way that I've chosen to identify. But if I don't identify as being a Democrat, when things go up for Nancy or things go down because of Mitch McConnell or whatever like that, it's not me that goes up and down. And so we stop identifying with outside organizations. We stop identifying with all of the rules and regulations that have kept us feeling bad, and we begin to use our own wisdom to see what's the right way to go. And then we run across this thing called the self-preservation instinct. That's the root of all of the trouble. It's the me that does the clinging. And in fact, one way of talking about it, the Buddha talks about anatta, and that almost everyone thinks about it in the sense of there is no self. Now, one of the ways of looking at that or talking about it is that a better translation would be a soul, so that there is no eternal soul, that the self is merely an aspect of the self-preservation instinct. And so it might have been better in hindsight for Buddhism to have come to the West with a whole lot better translations than the ones that they've got. Because, look what we're stuck with. Meditation, monks, nuns, temples, scripture, chanting, prayer, a whole alphabet of words that have wrong definitions, including the word dukkha. Dukkha does not mean suffering. It means dissatisfaction. Suffering is way over there. I'm not suffering, but I sure am dissatisfied right now. And so we need to learn how to incorporate the Dhamma back to the point of real understanding. And so this word anatta that we were talking about, another way of looking at it is not that there is no self, but rather that it's to stop being the self when you catch yourself being the self. That's the way to look at it, is I'm going to stop doing it that way, because when I am the tooth, then I suffer when the dentist drills. But if I am not the tooth, then it's the tooth that's singing his song of torment. But I'm not singing that song of torment. I'm singing the song of yippee-ki-yo-ki-yay. I am not the tooth. And I feel very satisfied that I am not the tooth. So another way of looking at it also is, like Shakespeare says, all the world's a stage and everyone is a player. And that there is kind of a jostle or a war for who gets center stage. But the wise one will understand what Shakespeare is saying and recognize, look, the entire audience hall out there is almost empty. There's almost nobody out there because everybody's on stage trying to play a role. So I'm going to go sit in the audience seat and enjoy the show. Just enjoy the show. And so this is another way of looking at it, but it's the same thing. When I am not attached, I'm not part of the show. I'm above the show. I am an observer of the show, but now we can begin to understand who the observer is. But the important thing is to stop being attached to the show, because you're not the tooth, you're not the tire. And so on the way to find out who the observer is, we have to keep telling the observer to let go. Keep letting go. To let go of the tire. You are not the tire. You're not the tooth. You're not anything, in fact.
And just keep repeating that.
If you can remember.
Okay.
Yes, that's actually a very, very good way of gladdening the mind. It's not me. That's not my business. I am not that tooth.
Yeah, it's hard to overcome the automatic reactions.
These are skills to be developed. The last P. First we have practice, practice, practice. Then we have being on your toes all the day, so that we're now in a state of performance. But the third place is when we're still on our toes, but now we're ballerinas and we're dancing. So the third P is play. I have actually seen different performances on YouTube of the same violinist playing the same piece of music over a long period of time. Where he was a young violinist, he was performing it perfectly, and he was absolutely intently on getting it perfect. His later performance, he wasn't interested in being intently perfect. He was interested in enjoying the heck out of it. In fact, he really knew this piece of music. And so now he's dancing. He's not just performing a piece of music, he's literally playing it. And there are some artists get to that point. And when they do, they become quite renowned because of what they can do. So a good example would be Satchmo. Because and I'm not thinking so much about It's a Wonderful World, the song that he sang, but the way he played the trumpet is sometimes just, it sounds magical, but in fact, it's just that he's enjoying himself. He's just playing. And so this is then the way to live your life. Is sure be on your toes, but your whole life becomes a dance. Because you're not carrying anything around. You've detached yourself from all the stuff that you used to be attached to. You've heard the story that the angels can fly because they take themselves so lightly. And so this is how we're practicing, is to stop taking things as heavy. Things are light. I mean, if you had your choice, would you like for that tire to be a heavy burden because it's flat, or of no consequence, something completely light, irrelevant? Well, it's up to you. It's only a matter of an attitude. It's that simple. But we have to remember, because we are so stuck in the old samsara, the old ways of doing things, their habits.
Yep.
And so by learning to play, that's when we're actually there for Anapanasati, having, let us say, that huge engine firing on all of its cylinders now, including the fact that the body is at rest, is at peace, is passive, that we're not agitated.
Oh, yeah. So that's another question then. So that agitation still comes up, though. So even though this feels like everything is going so well, still after uh, maybe an hour of sitting, everything starts becoming agitated. My mind is agitated, my body, um, which I don't know. I don't really understand. I understand why it was there before. I don't understand how it goes away and then comes back again. I don't know why it's coming back, but it does.
It does, exactly. Just like you can shave your face
Yeah.
and it feels wonderful, but tomorrow it's stubble again. That's how. And that, let us say, in the beginning of your practice, that would be a good time to stop. But as you grow in your practice, the way to handle it is just recognize that. Ah, there's that restlessness. I've been waiting for it. Aha, I see you. Now I'm beginning to understand. And so now we begin to look at that restlessness, understand what it is, take a really close look at it, and then breathe deep into it and watch it relax and fade away. Because it's not you, it's not that you've become restless, it's just restlessness has come up. Or maybe it was already up and now you're just beginning to recognize it. Oh, I was that restless for that long and didn't know it, but I see it now. And so you begin then as a mental exercise that I talk about it, but this is a very good example where we can look at it in the sense of understand that restlessness in its many shapes and forms as a mode of investigating the mind. For instance, is this an intense restlessness or is it just a little thing that I notice? Is it something I can feel in the body? Does this restlessness arise to the level of anxiety? Or was it already at the level of anxiety and I'm just now beginning to notice that this anxiety is there? And then we begin to breathe with it, play with it. So this is a way of managing it, is by playing with it, by investigating it, checking it out, looking at it in the sense of, is it merely the mind or is it the body? You're saying that it's got a body component too. Everything wants to restless.
Yeah.
Enough of this tranquility. I've had about as much joy out of this as I can stand. Let me out of here.
That's what's confusing about it because I mean, when I started meditating, obviously I had that a lot, but it made sense because I was actually uncomfortable. So then, of course, there's discomfort. But now it feels good, and yet there's still that restlessness appearing, and
Okay.
it's like it has no obvious cause. It's just there.
Well, it does have an obvious cause, and that you could use under the label of habit. But the cause of that restlessness is old stuff. And that the mind is kind of like a cesspool. You keep stirring
Yeah,
that cesspool, and something's going to bubble up.
yeah. No, it's funny how reading the. I remember first reading the hindrances and seeing them as, oh, it's just a list of things, like just sort of a random list. And then the more I sit and do this, I'm like, no, they're literally those exact things. It's not generally, oh, here's some problems. It's no, there's those five exact things.
Exactly. Exactly so. And um, the technique of dealing with them is the same with each one with slight variation. For instance, drowsiness really indicates that you're not breathing well. And so you really do need to breathe. But breathing is actually a major component for each one of them. Mainly because if we're in a state of wanting things that we don't have, or having to put up with something that we don't like or approve of, generally our breathing gets shut down. That when we're in doubt, our breathing gets shut down. So, in fact, when the hindrances come back, we almost always talk about them as the whole crowd. First one, and then the second one, and then eventually we're dull and full of restlessness and worry and doubts, and everything comes in. But if you can catch them as they come in one at a time, then you can chase them out one at a time. And as you get that confidence built up, then that's where that first knowledge comes from is, hey, those things don't matter anymore. They used to run my life, but now with sati as the spark, I'm going to blow that stuff out of here. Now, they all have both mental and physical components. The doubt, in fact, will wind up as fear, a real bodily feeling of terror. Can get that bad. Wanting things gives us a feeling of longing, or I'm being drawn to something, etc. So all of the hindrances have both body and mental components. Or another way of saying it is that they have both thought components and emotional components, both Sita and Vedana. And it's your job to begin to see that by looking closely. And the better way of thinking of it is not my restlessness, it's just restlessness, not my doubt. I'm not in doubt. There's just feelings of doubt and thoughts of doubt. Never mind, start again. Keep looking, keep going, keep noting, keep gladdening the mind. Aha, I see you, restlessness. And that can happen way into a session. You can be sitting there 50 minutes just in total, oh, this is so nice. And all of a sudden, I want out of here.
Yep.
This being satisfied has all of a sudden become unsatisfying. I want to go do something that's unsatisfying instead. Comes up like that.
Yes, it does. Well, I guess I should go practice. It's starting to get late now.
All right. Well, this has been a really enjoyable session. I'm glad that you called.
Yes, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Have a great New Year. I will talk to you soon.
Okay. See you, Jeff. Bye bye.
Bye bye.